144 stations had committed several infractions, which necessitated that they be sanctioned. There's a breakdown of who did what, but I'm just giving a summary. At the end of the exercise, 56 FM stations were closed down. 43 of those stations have submitted fresh applications for authorization, out of which 30 have been processed and granted new authorizations to operate. The remaining 13 applications, I'm informed, will be processed within the first quarter of 2021. So by the end of March, the remaining 13 applications would be processed. Mr. Chairman.
Process for what?
Well, there's a procedure. Maybe let me recap. After the FM audit, certain fines were imposed ranging from several millions of cedis to thousands of cedis on some of the affected stations. Some operators started paying those fines. There was a huge outcry that the fines were too much. And so I came to this house and announced that upon consultation with the board, we're taking the decision to reduce the fines. The board itself took further action to reduce the fines to 1 year. Some had been in default for over 16 years, and they had calculated it backwards. Dissatisfied with all that, some of these stations went to court or the tribunal. Now the tribunal decided that the NCA acted wrongfully in imposing fines on those whose authorization had expired and had not applied for renewal. They could only impose fines on those who had valid authorizations. Now, if you do not apply for renewal 3 months at least before your license expires, it means you do not have a valid authorization, and you revert to the position of somebody who is now going to apply for an authorization. And so the NCA had to refund the monies that they had collected from those that they fined. And if the law doesn't allow you to operate without a license, then you do not have the right to operate without a license. And that's what led to the shutdown of the radio stations. So it was by operation of law. And there are several cases that decided that at the tribunal. And I can leave copies of it for the House, if so required.
Chairman, just a follow-up. So you are in the political space, freedom of expression, guaranteed constitutional right. The vehicle to express it is either through our mouth as we do, or through the medium of radio and television. Walking the delicate path of a balance, will you consider the closure of FM stations an affront to freedom of expression or a negative to its enhancement in our country?
Absolutely not. To enjoy any right, you come to equity with clean hands. But if the same law which grants you the right to operate as a radio station in furtherance of the freedom of expression, you flout that law as a citizen of this country, you are subject to the laws of this land and the sanctions applicable. And we cannot by any stretch of the imagination say when the law is being applied, it means it's an infringement on the right to free expression.
My question is within the context of your own reference to a judicial decision that those fines, assuming that is what informed a closure, you had done harm to freedom of expression.
The judicial decision was that they didn't have the right to impose fines, and they should enforce the law which applies to those who operate without authorization.
So did the imposition of the fines occasion the closure of any FM station?
No. The imposition of a fine did not occasion the closure of any FM station. Those operating without valid authorizations in violation of the law were closed down in implementation, in the enforcement of the law.
Come on. Please, if you may indulge me, follow. So, Honorable Minister Designate, from all that you have said in respect of the radio stations and NCA closure and imposition of fines, strongly you are making a case that you had personally not targeted any particular radio station as no. Very important. Neither had NCA targeted any particular radio station for political reasons. I just would want you to underscore that point from what you've just said.
Mr. Chairman, it is not possible for me to target any particular radio station for special treatment. Many of the names, I had no idea of what the political leanings or ownership of many of these stations are, apart from the known ones. And I believe even the chairman's own station suffered from this exercise, or a station he's affiliated with suffered from this exercise. It couldn't have been selective or discriminatory or unfair. Unfortunately, in enforcing the law, you have no way of knowing where the chips would fall. And so you work to ensure that you do it with a human face. And I believe that's what the NCA was trying to do when it imposed the fines, instead of closing down the stations outright. I'm not sure they opted for one or the other, but they figured that, and many affected persons did. On appeal to me, I directed them to go back to the NCA to sit down and talk to them and see how they could enter into payment terms and arrangements for them to settle these and some did and started paying. Others chose to go to court, which was their right.
So Muntie and Radio Good were not targets?
Absolutely not. If they hadn't acted in contravention of the law, nobody could have touched them or targeted them, no matter how much you disliked or hated them. You couldn't touch them because they would have been compliant with the law. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to clarify the air on that. Thank you.
Honorable,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, my question goes back to connectivity. There are many communities lacking telephone connectivity in this country. Recently, His Excellency President Mahama was in Turwe in the Savannah region, attending the burial of the late member of the Council of State, Tulewura Mahama. And all attempts to reach him, even in an emergency, proved futile. Similar issues persist in other places. If you go to, for example, Labariganya in Leaders Constituency, Tamalisa, you just can't talk to anybody. There's no way you can reach them. When you come to my own constituency, Salaga South, we go to Kibatito, Teacher Telukra. And once anyone moves from anywhere and enters those areas, that's it. Unless they come out of there, you are not able to make contact with them by telephone. And so I want to find out, if in the event that you are confirmed, what will be the plan to ensure that these communities all have connectivity to reduce the burden and stress of people when we need to transact business in some of these areas? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated in response to an earlier question, we are currently working on that. And there's this project that we're rolling out. And hopefully within 18 months, from November last year, so by the end of this year, we should have gone very far towards addressing some of these connectivity challenges around the country. It is a problem that whole populations are cut off from the rest of the country. Now, if we're able to make that work and provide the robust digital infrastructure to enable us to engage virtually, I think even our roads would have a longer lifespan, because you wouldn't have to move to point X to transact a business. You can do it on your mobile phone, and that would also help to grow the economies in the various parts of the country. So it is a major priority of this government. We've started working on it, and we intend to see it to completion. Thank you.
My second question has to do with the telecom companies, and specifically MTN. Sometime last year, I think the NCA described them as a strong market and further said that they were going to ensure that there was more competition in the market, and also pricing of telecom services would be more affordable to Ghanaians. I think the MTN didn't take kindly to these statements and went to court. Would you please share with us what the roadmap to success in this particular case is, and also whether that action, what its implications will be for investment in that sector in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe it's the telecoms policy which has put in place measures to prevent the emergence of monopolies in this telecom sector. And so it set a ceiling that if any entity, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, if any operator exceeds 40% of the market share in any sector, then certain rules kick in as they're designated as a significant market power. In 2016, the NCA undertook a research into the market conditions in this country, engaged a consultant to do that. They presented their report, which clearly stated that MTN was dominant in the market, in both voice and data. They updated that report, and that is what was presented to me, and upon consultation with them, they went ahead and designated them as an SMP. What that means is that they have to take steps to ensure that they do not provide differential pricing for people on their network and people who are from other networks. So despite the fact that they can have their own data plans and all that, they need to ensure that subscribers on other networks aren't treated unfairly. So they have to submit their pricing policies and plans for approval to the regulator. They have to, in interconnect, they have to be in asymmetrical interconnect. Those who are terminating calls on their network would pay less than they who are terminating calls from their network. A whole slew of regulations kick in. I'm happy to report that they are in constant discussions with the regulator on how to manage this process so that the ultimate consumer doesn't suffer. It is a market correction initiative. It is not a punitive measure. And we're hopeful that at the end of the day, it will result in more favorable costs for the consumer, for the consumption of the various services. It will enable the other companies who are also operating in the market to have a more fair playing field within which to operate, and it will inure to greater benefits for the industry as a whole and the citizens in general.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my last question is on COVID. We all recall that at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, your ministry launched an app, which the BBC described as fanfare event. Now, will you be able to furnish us with the cost of the app, the cost involved in the launch, and also whether the app has indeed lived up to what we expected it to do in terms of helping trace contacts within the COVID pandemic, and how successful it has been? What will you say are the achievements? What will you say are the app's achievements so far, and whether you are able to tell us the cost of the app, the launch, and whether it's been able to actually live to what the expectation, the COVID tracing, contact tracing app that was launched at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In many parts of the world, at the onset of the pandemic, they tried to use technology to assist them in contact tracing and for people to self-report and to give an overview on what was happening in the various countries to enable the health authorities get a handle on it. We also had a lot of conversations around this, and certain public-spirited individuals offered all manner, just as people were offering PPEs and monies in the fight against COVID. Some companies working in the sector also offered to put their expertise at the disposal of the government, and we gladly accepted it. And so, I have said so several times, the COVID app didn't cost the Exchequer, the Consolidated Fund, the government of Ghana, a PESWA. We didn't pay anything for the COVID app. It was a contribution that one of the companies working in the sector decided to make to assist our efforts in the fight against the pandemic. So far, I haven't received any invoice from anyone for payment for this app. So I hope this settles the matter of the cost of the app and its launch and related expenses attached to its use once and for all. Secondly, what benefits have we derived from it? We've put in place the infrastructure that the Ghana Health Service can use to assist in contact tracing. Now, we all know that it is spread through contact with infected persons. So if we're able to detect early enough that there's a cluster of cases in a certain area, it can even lead to localized lockdowns so that they can be treated and dealt with. And that was the intention with which we took up the offer to set up and implement this app, working in consultation with the Ghana Health Service. Now, it's built on voluntarily uploading or downloading the app and inputting your information on it. It is not mandatory. So whether it will be effective or not depends on how Ghanaians utilize it. The noise generated by its launch and the way we demonized it led to a low uptake of the app, and so we're where we are. Despite the fact that the infrastructure exists, it is available.
Here the nominee use the word, the noise generated.
Okay, let me rephrase.
The noise
The
generated.
controversy generated by discussions around the cost of the app and whether it was useful or not, or all of that led to, sometimes we demonize very good projects, knowingly or unknowingly, and it affects public perception and usage, and ultimately we all suffer from it. What I can say is that the architecture, the infrastructure still exists. With this second wave, I think it would be useful if we revisited the usage of this app. We're going to have further discussions with the Ghana Health Service to see how they can also incorporate that into their terms. In Korea, it is mandatory to download the app for everyone who enters the country. And I know because my daughter, my niece, just went there, and she just sent me a short brief about what she went through. At the airport, every arriving passenger is asked to submit their test results, which we do here too, and then they go to a table where they are asked, or they're checked to see whether they have downloaded and set up a self-quarantine safety protection app. And they show them how to use the app to input their temperature twice daily, input their test results when they have it, input their contact information so that they can be reached, give the details of another person in the country who can be reached even at 5 a.m. in the event that...
So, Chairman, Minister Nominee, Chairman, would you indulge me? So, will you introduce a COVID application that facilitates testing and other things that protect Ghanaian life? My difficulty is we need to. You are now speaking as a leader of policy, just as you got the word noise. In the pursuit of public policy, the public have every right to raise objections to any policy pursued by government that they are dissatisfied or unhappy with. Will you provide that leadership?
Mr. Chairman, the app already exists. It is incumbent on us to utilize it. All its functionalities, all the functionalities that exist in the app in Korea exist in the app in Ghana. Whether we use it or not will determine whether it would help us in the fight against the COVID pandemic or not. If given the nod, I will work with the Ghana Health Service to facilitate its uptake. But we need to look at the question of whether it's going to be voluntary downloads or we're going to make it mandatory, as it happens in other parts of the world. Even the wearing of nose masks, which we all know will protect us from the pandemic, is a challenge when some people still refuse to wear it. And so we need to look at all of that. But if we do, we would find that technology can help us to beat this pandemic much quicker than if we use the traditional ways of doing things. But one of the major problems is attitudinal change.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, I want to congratulate you on your nomination. Forgive me, but I'd like to go back to a network connection one more time. It's something that is very, very dear to my heart. There was a time I was traveling with a member of this house from Yendi to Tamale, and between Honorable Member of Parliament from Young's constituency and Honorable Minority Leader's constituency, there are some areas that you lose network. Those areas mostly are where the armed robbers do their attacks. Now, we were trapped by the armed robbers, and it came very close to our vehicle. When I turned around, just about 5 meters away, holding the pump action, they fired into the vehicle. I don't know, just by the grace of God that we are still alive. We shattered the windscreen, the back windscreen and everything, and bullets went flying. Clearly you could see it was a pump action, but the bullets were spreading, but it was so close range that it didn't spread that much. 2 weeks ago, between Yemo Karaga from my constituency going to Karaga, also another area where there's there's a challenge that I want to...
In between certain places.
Let's
focus on that.
That security aspect. And then secondly, as I leave home, some of us here have our kids joining lectures on Zoom, and so on and so forth. Now, for those in the deprived communities, they are not able to catch up with some of these things. So the kids are in the home for over a year now. I think that I want to get your commitment on how to prioritize rural telephony so that it doesn't become just a tool for communication, but also a security matter and also something that would further virtual studies for those who are in the deprived communities. I need about 12 of such to, open up my constituency in Bushego. And like the Honorable Minority Leader was asking of the Education Minister to get the SAS for Kapayile, I want to make a very strong case for rural telephony in the constituency, especially because armed robbery is abound in those areas. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, as you indicated, it is not just a communications tool, but it can also help us in terms of our security architecture. And so there is 110% imperative. It is the highest priority for us to complete this rural telephony project and ensure that all the unconnected parts, or as many of the unconnected parts of our country as possible, are connected. Now, there was a question that a minority leader asked a previous nominee about blind spots on our highways. And as part of this project as well, they will cover all those blind spots. So if you could let me know that particular community area, I would inform the GIFEC and have them look into it as a matter of urgency. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, my next question to you is the status of free Wi-Fi to senior high schools. Is the policy on course? If it's on course, can you tell us how many schools or the plans that you have for free Wi-Fi in senior high schools?
Mr. Chairman, I can happily announce that we're not just now going to do it, but 90% of all senior high schools in this country are connected with free Wi-Fi. In addition to that, the education offices, I think it's the regional or district education offices, are also connected. And so that has been done. Now the challenge is how to extend that to the junior high schools, because working with the Ministry of Education, they, as the Education Minister designate informed us, are looking at introducing what they call blended learning, a mix of virtual and actual learning. And so we need to put in place the infrastructure to support that. And that will be one of the main priority areas that we look at, so that you don't have to be in a big city, but even in a remote community, you can also learn online or virtually. And it's something that we need to work at. We're also working with the Ministry of Education to set up a learning management system for all public universities to provide distance learning as well. So that's another project that we're working with. Now, once we're able to connect, as I indicated, using existing digital resources within government and extending it with procuring some from the private sector, we'll even be able to connect our schools, health facilities, security installations, police stations around the country, and help us all work better and sleep safer.
Mr. Chairman, my last question is one that is on self-assessment of your good self. As a Minister for Communication, what would you consider as the 3 highest points? And are there any lows? If there are any, kindly apprise this committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's a difficult one, but I'll try. I think putting in place the proper digital infrastructure to support the digitization of our economy in terms of the foundational things that we have done is one of the things that I'm most proud of. And we can mention the Ghana Post GPS, the mobile money interoperability system, the national ID system, the Ghana.gov payments platform, which enables, once fully rolled out, will enable citizens to apply for government services seamlessly and pay for those services electronically. If they input their digital address, they can even receive it at their doorsteps if need be. And I think that it's incumbent on all of us to work to ensure that that infrastructure works. The Smart Workplace projects that we have also implemented in 300 ministries, departments, and agencies so far, enabling public sector workers to work offline, virtually, is also one thing that we're most proud of. The strides that we've made in cybersecurity as well, though small, have earned us global acclaim. And now Ghana has been designated as the champion in West Africa for leading our cybersecurity initiatives. And if you look behind the Kofi Annan IT Center, you'd see a construction site there, and that will house the Cybersecurity Authority. We're building a secure facility for the Cybersecurity Authority, which will be in that enclave. Another thing that I also need to mention is what GIFEC has done with rural telephony, the community information centers, the cyber labs for schools, training and capacity building, not just for students, but for artisans, traditional authorities, women, peasant farmers, market women, all of that is something that we're particularly proud of. And the Girls in ICT initiative as well is an ITU initiative, but we've taken it to another level and have scaled it up.
Just a second. Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification. As part of the success story, the Colony GVG revenue, yes, you mentioned, but I just wanted you to underscore that for clarity. Yes, I mean, 20%. I just wanted clarity on that because you were talking about revenue generation and all those things. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Let me go back to that as well. That platform, which is owned by government, can also be leveraged to provide other services, and that's what is particularly exciting about that. As part of the contract, every 5 years, and I think this year will be 5 years, they have to upgrade the entire system architecture and provide more up-to-date equipment if the technology has moved on. That technology can also be leveraged to provide other services. And I spoke about the SIM registration and the equipment identity registration. The common platform is going to form the basis on which we are going to leverage all of that. So we don't have to procure expensive architecture to conduct the service again. We already own it. In addition to that, looking at the data generated from it, we can even use it to decide where to put our roads, transportation analysis. We can use the information generated to even do a lifestyle audit of people. If you see the amount of monies that are flowing in and out of their mobile wallets, it can give you an indication of the revenues that they earn and can be a guide to revenue officials. We can use it, it has national security possibilities as well. that can be utilized for anti-terrorism purposes. It can generate all kinds of reports on individuals and SIMs detailing telecommunications and mobile applications where possible. Now, as the minister responsible for data protection as well, it is the data generated by these platforms which is valuable, not the individuals who own those, who generate that data. And so we'll be working with anonymized data so we can analyze it and utilize it for general purposes. You can look at the average revenue per user, profiles, and charts, and all of that. And so all that are...
Please, with your leave, in an answer, the minister-designate is talking about an audit of the system for the purpose of upgrading within 5 years. When you were talking about the system using, that over a period it has to be upgraded, I want to know who does the audit of the system to determine the need to upgrade? Who has that responsibility?
The National Communications Authority, working with the contractors. Now, technology, I've been told, has a 5-year life cycle. So it may be functional, but there may be newer models and with better functionality available. So if any such situation exists and will be advised by the National Communications Authority, then they would have to procure the latest technology to be used in their services. Thank you.
Yes, yes, good.
I'm most grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just to quickly draw attention that the communication from His Excellency the President, the name of the nominee is quite different from what the nominee has on her CV. She has Ursula G. Owusu Ekuful, but the communication from His Excellency the President does not have the G. It will be important to reconcile that for our records. If the nominee will indicate her preference, the one appearing on her CV or what we received from His Excellency the President.
Ursula Gifty Owusu Ekuful. There's Abna and behind there somewhere.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I want to proceed straight to my first set of questions, which will border on temperament and the nominees, publications, official communication, and public pronouncements. I hold in my hands, Mr. Chairman, 3 letters that the nominee has written to various people in recent times. The first one, dated 16th October 2019, to our colleague, the ranking member on the Finance Committee, as he then was, of the 7th Parliament, who had written to her on a matter to do with the communication service tax and some technical matters he thought required redress. I have a copy of that letter here, signed by the Honorable Atu Forson, and the letter was in pursuit of his mandate as ranking member, carrying out oversight and seeking clarification. I do not see any offensive language in that 25th March 2020 letter. However, the reply was most offensive, and in the 5th paragraph, the nominee writes, and I quote, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, However, if you feel strongly that customers do not deserve this kind of treatment, you know what to do and are entitled to your opinion. Your remedy does not lie in issuing orders and instructions to me on how to do my work. As the adage goes, if I want lessons in good morals, I certainly will not go to the brothel for it, unquote.
Sammy, can you give us a date? The date.
16th October 2019.
Thank you.
I also have a second letter dated November 1, 2018, addressed to the Secretary of the Bank of Ghana. It's on the official letterhead of the Ministry of Communications, and is signed by Anastasia A. Marfo on behalf of the Minister. Exposure of key financial data of mobile customers, Kelny GVG, contractual requirement. We acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 25th October 2018 on the above subject matter. If the Bank of Ghana desires to communicate with the Minister for Communication on this or any other matter, kindly let the Governor do so. The level of disrespect exhibited by the bank on this matter is simply appalling. We will disregard this letter and its contents. Have a good day. Yours sincerely. There is yet a third evidence I have here, and this is an extract from some email communication to a major telco chief executive officer, dated 4th April 2020, sent at 11:54 a.m. The last paragraph of the communication reads, and I quote, "This is not a joke, please, and we need the merchant codes and unhashed Momo numbers to be able to trace anyone using that service. You are jeopardizing our work, and I am about to descend on you like a ton of bricks if you keep stonewalling. Good morning." And that's how the communication ends. Yes, this was an email you sent to a chief executive officer on the 4th of April 2020 at 11:54 a.m. These three communications from you and the one by Anastasia, who my checks indicate works in your office, is pointing to a certain temperament and attitude which many have raised concern about, industry players and members of the general public. Do you think that this is the best tone and the attitude that a public servant should have in official communication in the course of her work?
Is the one you said was that email, was that also official communication?
Yes, it's official. They were in a group.
Can you give that one to her, or give them to her to identify?
Yes, I can.
Coming from her.
Yes.
So the clerk will come.
Yeah, Honorable Suhini, if you can kindly
And
pass
then,
it.
Honorable Akayo, Chairman. So, Minister.
So there's the one from the reply to Honorable Atufosin, the reply to the Secretary of the Bank of Ghana, and then the communication to the Chief Executive Officer of a telecommunications operator.
So, Chairman, just to top up with what Honorable Black said, Minister, your communication smacks of arrogance. Are you an arrogant person?
Mr. Chairman, I have never sent any email to the Chief Executive Officer of MTN, and I want that put on record. What you're referring to as official communication is WhatsApp messages, not emails. And I don't do business, official business, on WhatsApp. If it's official communication, I will send official communication to them. Mr. Chairman, as I indicated in my introductory remarks, I am fair but firm. That may be interpreted by some as being too hard, and as Honorable Ablakwa put it, how did you refer to it?
The tone is most inappropriate. And some of it are abusive. The one to Honorable Atuforsen, for example. I mean, I have his letter. If the chairman permits me, I can read it. Raising technical issues, he showed you utmost respect, and then you tell him that you will not go to him for moral lessons, as though he was operating some brutal, the most inappropriate idiomatic expression in formal communication.
That's an idiomatic expression which simply means that I know where to go to get information from which particular source, and I won't go to the inappropriate source to get it. So, as my letter indicated, the Honorable Ranking Member of the Finance Committee was seeking to tell me that I had no authority to do what I had to do, and I told him in no uncertain terms that I disagreed with his assertion, and I would continue to do my work to the best of my ability. Maybe it's the use of the word brothel, because I heard a lot of this on the public commentary on this, and I have responded to it. I am not operating any brothel. I do not think that he operates at the level of brothels. That's not the meaning of the idiom. And so words have meanings. If we put the right meanings to them, we will not fall into the mistaken belief that maybe something untoward is being done. But as I indicated, I am fair, but I am firm in the work that I do. And if people take exception to it, I cannot promise that I would act differently, but we would be more measured in our responses going forward.
But, Chairman, when you are measured, I cannot promise doing it differently. I will be measured. Reconcile that.
I will try. I cannot promise, but I will try.
Honorable Member, the complaint is that the language you chose is not the language of public service. Is that what you're saying? You will try to be more measured, rather?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the phrase that is normally used to end such official communication is, I extend to you the assurances of my highest esteem. We will endeavor to do that.
You endeavor to use public service language because you are public
Absolutely,
service.
going forward.
So, Chairman, is she accepting that that language was not public service language and that she endeavor to make a distinction between Ursula as a person and the Minister for Communication, and a clear distinction between public life and public service and personal life?
Mr. Chairman, I'm aware of that distinction. If I'm sending a WhatsApp message to a colleague in the industry, I would exercise some laxity and relax in the way we communicate with each other. And if that is now being elevated to the point of official communication, then it puts me at a bit of a disadvantage in knowing how to relate to people informally. When I am writing official communication, it is formal and it is done so. But in informal WhatsApp messages, which have been printed and are being shown here as official communication, then it puts us and our relations with the named individuals in a bit of an awkward position. So we will endeavor to...
Mr. Chair, with your leave, just to understand the contention here, the language which is a subject matter of this interrogation, you mean to say it was an informal WhatsApp communication between you and the person, which WhatsApp message has now been printed? Just
Mr. Chairman, if I can clarify, there are 3 letters or statements in issue. A response, formal response on the Communication Ministry letterhead signed by the Minister to the ranking member on the Finance Committee, Honorable Owusu. That's 1. 2 is a letter from the Honorable Minister's office to the Secretary of the Bank of Ghana, which I find equally appalling, from a public officer. That's 2. Formal letter signed by Madame Anastasia, the Minister's office, on her behalf. Then a 3rd one is communication. I thought it was email. She says it's WhatsApp, but it's still communication from the Minister. She is not denying that series of, and there's a thread, series of communication. And there were many parties receiving those communications. So there are 3 examples I have provided. So I'm surprised that the Honorable Deputy Majority Leader is trying to situate all of this under informal communication. I may concede with the WhatsApp one on informal.
Well, let's move on.
But there are 2 formal communications, the first 2.
Yes. Now, can we move on?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, still as a follow-up to the matter relating to temperament, which is an important matter this committee looks at, is a 20th February 2020 interview that the nominee granted, which really scandalized this side of the House. We had staged a walkout of the State of the Nation address, which is part of the democratic tools available. Our colleagues boycotted the 2013 State of the Nation address by President Mahama. There were many boycotts on both sides, even constitutional promulgation and all of that have been boycotted. There have been walkouts on several occasions. And yet, when we walked out on the 20th of February 2020, the minister-designate described us as a group that had taken leave of their senses. They have taken leave of their senses. Does the Honorable Minister-designate agree that she owes us an unqualified apology? The video is available, Mr. Chairman. I think.
Now, frankly, I'm a bit worried. When it comes to videos, people edit them to support their stories. So if we have been aware, we would have considered them in their circumstance at committee before they are aired here. Now, there's no way I can know the content is what is being shown, whether that is properly admissible within our rules or not. Just being dumped on us as a committee. You know, I thought that ought not to be the situation. We should have discussed them in-house before we agree that this can be showed as a committee or in public before, you know.
Chairman will be guided, but just accommodate it. If they say and she has a contrary view, she can state that for our purposes. But I shall have brought that to your attention. Okay.
It looks as if they've taken leave of their senses, excuse me to say, particularly when their leadership also indulges in this completely unnecessary and senseless exercise. Now on their reason also indulges in this completely, excuse me to say, particularly when their leadership also indulges in this completely unnecessary and senseless exercise. But staging a walkout which is uncalled for, totally without reason, it looks as if they've taken leave of their senses, excuse me to say, particularly when their leadership also indulges in this completely unnecessary and senseless exercise. Now on their reasoning, they will be speaking at 1 p.m., but we have got some.
Please ask your question. I don't know whether you heard, members heard, but it looks like the same thing that is being repeated over and over again.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the expression, they have taken leave of their senses, it's an outright insult. It's most offensive. And this house, this side of the house, feels scandalized by it. We are hurt by it. The nominee, I believe, owes us an apology because it is not acceptable to call colleagues, honorable members of the House, all of us, not even some, all of us, that we have taken leave of our senses.
Mr. Chairman, if you listen to the full tape and you do not situate what you're saying in context, then maybe what the member is saying may be justified. But what I said is, it looks as if they've taken leave of their senses. Excuse me to say. It's there. If we could just play it again, we would all hear exactly what I said. It looks as if they've taken leave of their senses. Excuse me to say. So even there, the intention is clearly not to say that the minority side of the House has taken leave of their senses. It's English language. And it has meanings. Words have meanings. And you read it within its context. We could also have said that it defies
Honorable
logic.
Nominee, Honorable Mrs. Ursula Owusu, the expression is the side on which you can say they are offended. However, I say, are you willing to say you're sorry to them?
Mr. Chairman, it's also critically important to situate statements within context so you do not read the wrong meanings into it. No offense was meant. If offense was taken, I apologize.
Chairman, so can we request that the nominee, in order we rely on it, you make available to us the full tape of that particular recording. We'll put it, we will situate it within context, but we will not give any secondary meaning to the primary meaning of those words you have used. Are you suggesting that in Ghana, if you want to, pardon my language, use abusive or insulting language on a person, just qualify it with excuse me, and that becomes justified? He's saying that we take objection. Those words were strong. So if you have any doubts, give us the full tape. We would look at it, we would analyze it. Honorable, you are, before Chairman Rusi out of order, kindly get
Mr. Chairman, even listening to the tape that was played here, that statement is made over and over and over again, right in this clip. We can play it again for the avoidance of doubt, but it says so clearly. It looks to me as if it doesn't mean you have. And I have said so again. No offense was meant. It is a description of the conduct, and I'm entitled to my opinion as well, with all due respect.
It is because no offense was intended that, in my view, as you should give him the opportunity to say, I did not intend to offend you. Yeah. So, Honorable, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I didn't get your ruling on the matter. Are you asking for the full tape?
I'm not asking for this is, what do you call, a video which has been edited for a purpose. That's why she has answered that question. I don't think that for its purpose, anything beyond this, we can use it for.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, her answer and her response is not clear. Is she questioning the video? Is she justifying what she has said?
Her answer is on record. Please proceed.
So we take it that she refuses to apologize to the NDC side.
Honorable Okujetu-Abraka, this is not fair. Please proceed with your.
Okay, that is fine, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to come to the second matter, which relates to the radio closures. The honorable nominee in an earlier response said that it was not targeted, it was not selective. But I have here a report from the Media Foundation for West Africa, which questions that claim. And the Media Foundation for West Africa indicates that they believe that the processes leading to the closure of the radio station, if I have your permission, I can quote from the report. Checks on the NCA's website today, May 13, 2019, for example, indicated that both Radio XYZ and Radio Gold were listed among the list of authorized FM stations in the country as of the last quarter of 2018. If one were to go by this data produced by the NCA itself, one would ask at what point did these stations become unauthorized? Secondly, checks by the Media Foundation for West Africa on the same NCA database indicated that a vast number of radio stations had not renewed their licenses since their acquisition. This then leaves one with the question, if stations that had not renewed their licenses were to be shut down, why penalize some stations and leave others, unquote. Media Foundation for West Africa, pointing to selectivity. How do you respond to that? And please, if you can also tie that in, you indicate that you charge the NCA to enforce their laws. Did you ask them to close down the radio station, Radio XYZ and Radio Gold, in the way and manner they did it? Gestapo raids, armed policemen, armed to the teeth. Is that how radio stations are closed down in a democratic society, where Chapter 12 of our Constitution guarantees media freedom?
Mr. Chairman, the latest report on FM broadcasting service in Ghana from 2017 to 2020 that I have is dated January 2021. And it gives an update on what was done. For the avoidance of doubt, if you would indulge me, the audit was conducted in March 2017 to, among others, assess all FM radio broadcasting authorization, excluding public FM stations operated by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, identify stations with expired authorizations and those that have not commenced operation within the stipulated period. It was also aimed at recommending appropriate actions for the various cases of regulatory infractions, as well as improvements in the authority's internal working procedures. It identified a total of 144 FM radio stations which were either operating with expired authorizations or had failed to commence operations within the stipulated 2-year period after the grant of their licenses. And there's a table which indicates who did what. Companies whose 5-year authorization expired before the audit but failed to submit complete set of renewal documents were 51. 26 companies applied for renewal before the audit, but no authorization was issued, and they were requested to resubmit a complete application because their application was incomplete. 18 had been issued provisional authorization before the audit, but hadn't paid the fees in full by the time of the audit. 15 had failed to commence operations 2 years within the time that they were granted authorization, even though their authorizations were still within the 5-year validity. And then the rest, 30, were community and campus FM stations that emanated, 34, that fell within the audit. And the enforcement actions that were undertaken, and I'll be grateful if members would listen carefully. Following the recommendations of the audit report and the decision of the Electronic Communications Tribunal in the case of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association versus the NCA, the authority shut down 51 commercial FM stations for failure to submit complete set of renewal documents prior to expiry of their authorizations. In effect, they did not have a valid authorization, and that included Radio XYZ and Radio Gold. They were not targeted out for special mention. 51 stations were shut down. 5 community FM stations who also failed to submit a complete set of documents following the amnesty granted on 20th October were also shut down. A total of 15 commercial FM stations were fined as a penalty for failure to commence operations within the stipulated period. Now, the tribunal, in its ruling in the GBC, GIBA and NCA case, further indicated that a renewal application submitted after the expiry of an authorization is not a valid authorization, and the affected FM stations needed to apply for fresh authorizations. Out of the 51 FM stations that were closed down, 41 have applied for new authorizations, of which 28 have been processed, and the remaining 13 are also being reviewed and processed. Where in all this does it state, as the Media Foundation for West Africa has stated, that Radio Gold and XYZ were singled out for special treatment? They have got it wrong, and they should get their facts right.
There's a second part to my question as to why only Radio Gold and Radio XYZ had the kind of Gestapo raids that we witnessed on the 9th of May 2020.
Honourable Member, the question is inclusive of that. Move on.
Yes, it has not been responded to.
The answer is inclusive of that, and the report does not single them out.
No, I'm talking about the way and manner the closures were done with armed security personnel. Only those 2 stations from our checks and from the Media Foundation for West Africa's report, that they noticed that only those 2 stations witnessed that kind of Gestapo raid.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I do not direct the NCA on how they perform their functions of enforcing their law. Mine is to indicate the policy direction that the enabling legislation should be enforced. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord Mr. Chairman, as further information, following the FM audit, the authority has observed increased regulatory compliance from FM stations in Ghana. The authorizations, which are due to expire at the end of 2020, people started applying for renewal long before the expiry date. And so, if for nothing at all, the enforcement of the regulations in this sector have led to increased compliance with the regulations guiding the operations in this sector. That can only be a good thing. And I commend it to every other ministry, department, and agency and regulatory authority that let's start applying the laws and the rules and the regulations guiding our conduct in this country, in all sectors. And we can only end up with a nation which we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my final question is related to contracting under the then minister at the Ministry of Communications. 2 examples will suffice. I want to raise the matter to do with a smart workplace that the Honorable Minister said a company called Martin Fracco Limited will execute during the COVID-19 period, for which I see a letter here addressed to the Minister responsible for Finance for the payment of $9.9 million to enable public sector workers work on what is called here a smart workplace platform that will be engineered by this company. 300 MBAs are supposed to have benefited between July and September 2020. However, my checks indicate that this is not the case. The nominee may want to speak to that. Then, that 300 MDAs have not had access to the smart workplace as the contract with Martin Fracco Limited, for which a payment request of $9.92 million, and I can tender the letter signed by the Honorable Ursula Owusu Ekuful to the chairman or to the nominee if she wants to refresh her memory. Public sector workers don't have access to this smart platform in this COVID era, as this solution purported to be addressed. The second matter relating to
Honorable, the date of the letter, I need it. And then the entity name, SMART what?
Is Martin Fracco Limited.
Okay,
Martin Fracco Limited. It is 25th March 2020. Reference number HA277297010. So this matter, together with the Kelny GVG issue, which Imani Ghana produced a report, a copy of which I have here, insisting that the procurement process was rigged.
Honorable, please answer the first question.
Mr. Chairman, the National Information Technology Agency is the agency that is implementing the smart workplace infrastructure. Their information that they provided to me is that 300 ministries, departments, and agencies have been connected to the smart workplace platform, which is being powered by eSolutions, a Microsoft vendor, and for which Smart Infraco is providing the digital infrastructure support to enable them extend those services to all the MDAs, whether in their workplaces or in their homes. My information is from the National Information Technology Agency. I don't know where the honorable member got his information from, but the information I have from NITA is that that work has been done. and they have made several representations to the Ministry of Finance on that, and it's easily verifiable.
Have they been paid, Chairman, with your indulgence? Have Martin Franco been paid that amount, to your knowledge?
There are several payments outstanding on this Smart Workplace project. They include Microsoft license fees, setup costs for e-solutions, operations and management costs for e-solutions, and infrastructure and connectivity costs for Smart InfraCo.
So, to your knowledge, NITA developed the invoices, and NITA, National Information Technology Agency, supervises. So invoices would have been generated by them and procurement supervised by them. Is that the case?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Patricia.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to congratulate my sister, the nominee designate for communication. Honorable, I've always known you as a woman's rights activist, and you conducted with such a passion and commitment that you even earned recommendation and the admiration of my late mom, Mrs. Agatha P.J. Honorable, being in Parliament for 8 years and pursuing another term for 4 years, what are some of the challenges women in politics face, and how do we overcome them? Thank you very much.
This one, the challenges are many, and I don't even know if we can even begin to scratch the surface of it in here during this forum. But let it suffice us to say that we are indispensable for the development of any nation. And Kofi Annan, may his soul rest in peace, says we treat women, our most valued resource, as if we've tied our productive hand, our right hand, behind our backs. Instead of freeing the right hand to be able to work, we treat women by tying them up behind our backs. Mr. Chairman, as a woman who's been in politics for some time, I think we need to look at the way we fashion out our political arrangement to make it possible for more women to engage in the political arena. The cost of doing politics is prohibitive. It puts people off. The insults that are heaped on us merely for venturing to participate in the governance of our country, particularly the sexually explicit laced insults that almost every woman in public life is exposed to, is offensive. The pain it causes our families, those who use that language to us, should think about the manner in which we organize our political arrangements to the meetings we have. For the men, you have your wives at home taking care of the homes and the children, and so you can stay out for as late as you like, knowing that the home is taken care of. Women have to juggle multiple responsibilities and keep an eye on the family as well. So late night meetings, long meetings, and all that are a disincentive. Fundraising exposes women in politics to all manner of dangers when people make unseemly advances to you merely because you're going to seek resources to finance your campaign. It's something that we all need to look at and design and fashion out policies which will make it easier for women to engage in politics. You end up having to develop a very, very thick skin. And you are labeled as arrogant because you speak your mind. You don't find men being subjected to that. It's as if we're here on sufferance. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we make it impossible for women to also engage freely in the political life of our country. I'm sure we can all bear witness to the fact that we bring a different perspective to the conversations. We give a lot more back to our communities. We are caregivers, and we provide an alternative to the conversations at the table. And we are not at the decision-making table on sufferance. We deserve to be there because we represent the majority of the population in this country who also have to have a voice. And I cannot exhaust all the many challenges, but there are many. And this is just a snapshot and overview of an area that I feel very, very passionately about. And I believe that on both sides of the House, the two caucuses the female caucuses on both sides of the House, we need to sit down and have a conversation about how we're going to work collectively together to advance the cause of the women in this country. Irrespective, regardless of our political affiliation, we're women first, and we represent the women of this country. And together we are their voice in the House. And we can work together to make life a little easier for our younger sisters and children who see us as role models and would like to also follow in our footsteps. I hope that the difficulties will end with this generation of female politicians, and it will not be extended to the next generation so that they would have an easier life in the politics of this country. But we're not going anywhere. We're here for keeps. And so we all have to face that reality. And we're here to stay and learn to work with us so that together our country will be better off for it. And both hands, left and right, will work together to develop our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable, thank you for your well-articulated views on women challenges. But let me also look at the SDGs. You know, our president, Nana Ekuful, was appointed on 2 terms to serve as a co-chair of the eminent group of Sustainable Development Goal advocates. You will agree with me that as a country, we have realigned our sectorial policies with agenda to facilitate the achievement of goal number 5 by the year 2063. What are you specifically doing to help more women and girls acquire digital knowledge? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this question. The world is changing. We're moving towards the 4th industrial revolution. If we do not acquire the right skills, we will be left behind. Women and girls also need to be given the opportunity to engage in this space. And since I started life in this ministry, I've taken a particular attention to this area. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there's this Girls in ICT program. We've scaled it up. We are training more girls in the most remote parts of this country. We're encouraging them to also engage in this space. We're not just giving them the practical computer literacy and basic coding skills that they need, even in the work that they do. We're providing them with computer laboratories where they are. And in addition to that, we have a mentorship program, which I think is one of the best things that we could do for the girls. And we expose them to interaction. We give them an opportunity to interact with females in ICT who are working in the technology space. And they share their experiences with them, encourage them, and motivate them to also dare to dream to be an ICT professional in this area. And then we bring the best 100 girls to Accra to spend a week interacting with females in their workplaces as they utilize technology daily. And so they've seen chief technology officers, ICT specialists, women in marketing, sales, and in management level, CEOs, female CEOs of ICT companies who are living and breathing technology every day in their day-to-day life. So it's not just an academic exercise for them, but they see ICT in action in the lives of females in technology. I got letters from many young girls around the country. I was bringing it, but I forgot. Heartwarming that for many of them, they never thought it would ever be possible for them to meet women at the highest levels in various fields of endeavor who are also using technology. And for them, it's an indication of the possibilities that are available if they also get a career in ICT. One lady said she had planned and decided that she was going to be a nurse, but after that exposure, she's going to be a software designer. A 9-year-old said she's going to design her own robots. And it is heartwarming to hear such stories. So for me, creating the opportunity for women to engage at that level, for girls to be challenged and interested in taking up careers in ICTs is very, very heartwarming. There's a technology lab and a mobile hub that has been set up at the Accra Digital Center and the KNUST. And as part of their mandate, more than 40% of the women, the people they train must be women. And the latest report I received is that they've trained about 5,000 people, 44% of whom are women in website creation, all kinds of things, applications and software development, and all kinds of things. And so I'm excited that this space is also being created for more women to engage. We can excite them to do more. And I think we just barely scratched the surface.
You're excited about the girls.
And I make no apologies for it, Mr.
I'm not asking you to apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My final question. Honorable Minister Designate, I think during the writing for the past 4 days that we've been sitting, this question has been put to almost all the ministers, especially to do with security and defense. Fraud on social media and impersonation is on the rise. And how do you intend to curb it as the use of social media platforms are also increasing? Hello? How do you intend to curb it? Curb. As one, yes?
Fake accounts.
I'm talking about fraud and fake accounts and impersonation, yes. How do you intend to curb it as the use of social media platforms are also increasing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that was even that question was even asked by the National Security Minister as well. It's a very, very prevalent problem that we face, and almost all of us have had our identities cloned and fake accounts set up through which people solicit for or extort monies from people claiming the supposed minister or MP or senior government official was going to provide them with jobs, and they needed to provide protocol forms, buy protocol forms for it. We've said over and over again that those are false claims and nobody is providing jobs on WhatsApp or these social media, Facebook or these social media platforms. The National Cybersecurity Center has a working relationship with Facebook, and once they are alerted, Facebook pulls down those fake sites. But we also need to certify if we are on those social media platforms. We have to indicate which is our real, authentic page so that that can be protected. And any other page that is set up using your identity will be pulled down. But as fast as they are pulled down, they pop up. And that is why we believe that registering SIMs and devices will be an easy way of clamping down on those who are using these digital platforms to defraud people so that we can go against them because their identities will no longer be hidden. And it's an imperative that we set that infrastructure in place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Can I take a short comfort break, please?
Yes, you may. So, honourable members, 5 minutes to take your break and come back. 5 minutes. Honorable, please resume your seat. Okay. Was there anybody on the majority side? Yes, Honorable John. We finished with majority, right? Oh, sorry. Honorable Eric Obogu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, in 2018, the government secured a facility of 155 million euros from the Ghana Exim Bank for the Ghana Rural Telephony and Digital Inclusion. The project intention to close the gap in the digital divide. Can you indicate to the committee the status of the project and the measures you have put in place to maintain the facilities should there be a challenge?
Honorable Minister, you've spoken to this matter, so try to be brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About 400 cell sites have been constructed since the project was launched. And a special purpose vehicle has been set up to manage the infrastructure and ensure that we derive maximum benefit from it. They are on schedule and on target to reach their objectives by the end of the project period. Thank you.
The government of the New Patriotic Party, under the leadership of Nana Addo Ekuful, made a promise to provide free Wi-Fi to all senior high schools in the country. The contract was awarded. Can you indicate to the committee the number of schools that have the Wi-Fi as we speak and the cost of that project?
We work with the Ministry of Education, who are the actual implementing agents for the school Wi-Fi project. My information is that about 90% of all the senior high schools in this country are connected currently. I don't have the exact figures, but the Ministry of Education should be able to provide it. Thank you. And they would know the full cost of it. I believe connectivity has been written into a budget line, has been provided under the free senior high school project to cater for this project going forward, so we can ensure its sustainability. But I don't have the full details of it. Thank you.
Now, a simple question on the floating bridge. You recall you constructed a floating bridge in your constituency to facilitate mobility. And then the bridge could not float, but washed away. I want you to indicate to the committee the source of funding, the cost of the project, and whether there are plans to reconstruct that bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I worked with Professor Frimpong Boateng, who was in charge of Science, Technology and Innovation Ministry, to construct that bridge, because when he came on an inspection of the Chemo Lagoon and saw the state in which he was, he indicated that he could assist us put up a permanent, temporary facility on that bridge to facilitate movement of persons from between Shiabu, which is in Ablekuma South constituency, Choko, which is in Ablekuma South constituency, and Shiabu, which is in my constituency. And I can report that for that facility as well, it did not cost us anything, because the good old Professor facilitated this construction from his own resources. And unfortunately, the bridge would not float, as you indicated. But the information I had was that it was tampered with, and that is why it broke. But I can also report that even at the commissioning of the sword cutting for this bridge, we indicated to the community that that was a temporary solution and that we would construct a motorable road and bridge between Shiabu and Choko. And the contract for that has been awarded under the Coastal Development Authority. So we're looking forward to the revival of the old Winneba Road, which that bridge would connect. And hopefully they will name the bridge after me when it is done because of all the pain I've suffered for it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. John Puma.
Congratulations, Honorable Nominee. The usage of digital technology by various public entities in the delivery of public services has been slow despite a lot of innovative efforts by His Excellency the Vice President, Dr. Baumia, and your good self. Now that digitalization has been added to your portfolio, what will you do to leapfrog our public sector into the Web 2 era, which is more dynamic and shareable, so that we can compete with other countries that are digitally advanced? And please, can you tie in with the digitalization agenda of this government in the second term? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The public sector has to work in tandem with the private sector to enable us succeed in our digital agenda. Thankfully, many of these initiatives are private sector led, but we'll provide the policy direction for it. As I indicated in answer to an earlier question, the foundations have been laid, and we need to build upon it. We need to build a digital infrastructure which will support the digital applications and services which will enable us to work better. We need to make it easier for citizens to access government services. We need to make it easier to retrieve information and data, to analyze it for the purposes of policy formulation and planning. And when given the nod, we would lead that exercise to enable that to be done. We must maximize the use of national data that we generate. The data sitting in silos, as I indicated earlier, doesn't benefit us. But once we maximize the use of it, we can even create even more jobs in this area. And that would also help us to deal with the unemployment situation here. Government can also and has used its purchasing power in the past to grow the local tech industry. Our digital property address system, the national ID system, the Ghana.gov platform were all developed by local Ghanaian tech entrepreneurs. These are local applications to address our current needs, which have global applications. And so I've been promoting the work that they have done, not just locally, but internationally. And through our membership of the Smart Africa Alliance, we have indicated how useful these platforms have been in our digitization drive. And several member countries are interested in working with our local Ghanaian tech entrepreneurs to utilize these solutions elsewhere. The common platform is being replicated by the local contractors in other parts of Africa, which is also growing the recognition for our place in the tech ecosystem on the continent. I've also talked about what we've done in cyber security, but there's a lot more that we can do in various fields of endeavor, and I'm looking forward to working with all stakeholders to ensure that Ghana is seen as the go-to place for all things digital in the sub-region in the near future. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I know that under your tenure as Minister for Communication and in collaboration with GIFEC, a lot of community information centers were established and renovated across the country in order to deepen access to the internet. It is being suggested that the community information centers, instead of waiting for people to visit the centers and to use the facilities, they should be seen in the communities. They should be moving to the communities to educate and promote the usage of the internet so as to attract more people. Is it possible for these information centers to adopt this approach?
Absolutely, and I think we've already started having conversations around this area, that the community information centers should become the e-services centers in the various communities in which they exist. So even if there's no access to the internet in the general area, in that center, they would have access to the internet, and they need to move out to educate more people in the marketplaces, in the schools, on their farms, on how to use digital tools to make their life easier. So these are all some of the initiatives that GIFEC will be encouraged to roll out if I'm giving them all. Thank you very much.
Honorable Samson.
Thank you very much.
We agreed on two, right?
Hmm?
We agreed on two questions.
What?
You and we agreed on two questions.
You are who?
You and I.
Not
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee is quoted to have said that if governance is about borrowing, her 18-year-old son would have run Ghana better than President Mahama. And this was when President Mahama's government had borrowed about 56 billion Ghana cedis from 2013 to 2016. Now, another government from 2017 to 2020 has borrowed close to 170 billion Ghana cedis. Do you still stand by your position and that you agree that your son would have done better than Nanado's government for borrowing close to 170 billion Ghana cedis?
Mr. Chairman, I have no recollection of making any such statement.
No, I'll read it. No. Ghana Web. Mr. Chairman, Ghana Web. My 18-year-old son can run Ghana if governance is all about borrowing. Ursula Ekuful. And to read, Mr. Chairman, incumbent member of Parliament for the Ablekuma West constituency, Owusu Ekuful, took a swat at former President Dramani Mahama when he stated in an interview that her 18-year-old son can run the country if all governance entailed was borrowing and increasing taxes. Unquote, Mr. Chairman. I said Ghana Web. Please, you are not the chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, Can the nominee speak to my question?
Yes, it says she doesn't remember making that statement.
After reading it,
I don't remember. There's a report I just monitored on Old Banda's report. I showed it to the leader. And we, the two of us, are alleged to have made private arrangement for our staff to be tested. COVID.
And that they are negative.
And that our staff are negative. These are not true. She says she didn't say that. That's her answer.
she said he doesn't report. She didn't say that he didn't say it. He didn't say that he didn't say it. So, Mr. Chairman, now that I've remanded her, can she recall ever made that statement?
I have no recollection of making any such statement, Mr. Chairman.